Well, welcome everybody to session 4. What a great day it has been, our fourth and final session of the day. And this is a great opportunity for us to get together and have not only our safety auditor experts that are going to kick this session off, but also all the speakers and hosts from the other session are going to gather here today with us. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in Captain Clark McNeese, who is hosting session 1 today, as our speakers are gathering in the waiting room. So Otter, how did it go today in session 1? Anything you want to share on that you found particularly interesting or thought-provoking?
Yeah, wow. It was so encouraging to hear from Brian Sims about the success Delta Airlines has had in improvement of safety due to their UPRT program. It was just really neat to hear a lot of great data for sure. And then, of course, Brad Bennett's talking about their successful upset recovery, again, directly attributed to their training as well. So just a power-packed session. And by the way, those of you that missed it, you can make the recording. You can still see the recording.
Yeah, it's going to be on demand forever. So, jump back there and watch it at your leisure. That's one of the nice things about this session. Even this one, you can go to on demand right now, even though it's only been running for a few minutes. So let's go ahead and talk about this fourth session because it's kind of unique for us. What we've done here is created a session dedicated to SMS, safety auditors, then a panel on UPRT solutions. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Folks are gathering in the waiting room right now. But Otter, if you can just stay on here to introduce our first speaker in just a minute, which is going to be Sonny Bates, that would be great. So in this session, I'm honored to be your host. I am the CEO of Aviation Performance Solutions. My background comes from military, airlines, and then with this business we have here today, specializing in UPRT for the past 25 years, gives us unique perspective on what it takes to be effective at overcoming the threat of loss of control in flight, but also what pilots know and they don't know, but sometimes assume they know that they don't actually have as a skill set. So it's kind of exciting in that respect. So with our partners here, which we can see for this event, we have Wyvern, Aviation Safety Solutions, Aviation Safety Compliance, and SOS. What we're going to do is have these folks come in order. We're going to start with Sonny Bates with Wyvern, then AmandaFerraro with Aviation Safety Solutions, Jim Hosey with Aviation Safety Compliance, and then John Cox before we go to questions in the panel portion of it. Now, what we did, knowing that this particular event was going to have speakers and moderators showing up after this event started, we asked our safety auditors to record 3 to 5 minutes on their thoughts on implementing effective UPRT as part of an SMS or just best safety practices. So that's how we're going to get going on this event. So with that, Otter, if you don't mind, I think we might as well get started with Sonny Bates. Why don't we go over and have you introduce him?
Well, please allow me to introduce our first speaker, a good friend, Sonny Bates. Yeah, you may have seen him in session 2, but allow me to recap his background. Sonny is the CEO of Wyvern, and Wyvern is a global leader in elevating safety and security in aviation. And it is safe to say that Wyvern has established the highest standard in aviation safety and risk management. In the U.S. Air Force, Sonny was an instructor pilot, flight commander on the C-5 Galaxy and C-17, a flight examiner, aircraft maintenance quality assurance manager, and numerous other leadership roles. In his business experience, he's been chief pilot, safety manager, captain on various types of business aircraft, and he served as program director for the International Business Safety Council, overseeing the programs for over 700 operators worldwide. Sonny is one of these guys in an ongoing pursuit of knowledge to better serve the industry. His credentials and degrees include an FAA ATP, a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics, a Master of Science in Management, and I believe another master's degree as well, and a Doctorate of Philosophy in Management and Human Potential. He's also an NBAA certified aviation manager and an IBAC accredited auditor. Sonny is just a great guy, true professional, and he has a lot to offer the industry in safety and risk management. Please welcome Sonny.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, Otter. I really appreciate it. When I think about the value of a UPRT, I'd like to think of it more on maybe a global sense at first. It's such an important risk to address for the reasons that you so well at APS, promulgate, around the world. It is a risk that needs to be managed specifically, and any SMS, any operator that does not specifically focus on the threat related to loss control in flight, they're really missing an opportunity to shore up their defenses in their organization. So like a company like Wyvern, we audit companies around the world for safety. And, when we look at the degree to which they're addressing this risk, it is really an important part of the discovery, if you will, when it comes to findings and recommendations. And even in our systems at Wyvern, when we look at how an operator dispatches a flight, and if they run a Wyvern pass report, which is a pilot and aircraft safety survey, and these surveys look at each pilot, the degree to which they have the requirements by the standard, and the degree to which the operator has a safety management system that meets the requirements for the Wyvern Wingman standard. And in all that, we have built in flexibility so that if an operator is going above and beyond just the basic requirements for the regulatory authorities for pilot training, for example, if they have a bona fide UPRT program that meets the EPIC S2 standards that Wyvern and APS developed together to give a professional approach to UPRT based on ICAO guidance and industry professional codes of practice. If an operator does that and their pilots have gone through that training, then the pass requirements for that pilot specifically are more flexible, and we could accept a lower total time, let's say, in that aircraft because they've had UPRT training. Why? Well, we believe that the training that a pilot receives from a company that meets the EPIC S2 standard, like APS does, they give that pilot a certain set of skills that are universal that could apply to any type that they're flying. It gives them more confidence for manual flying skills, which is a real problem in the industry these days, as we all know, as the pilots get more and more dependent on automation. Once they go through a valid and highly professional program for UPRT, they actually understand the need to maintain those manual flying skills, and then how to prevent getting themselves into a situation that could actually result in an upset. So Wyvern, we formally and systematically appreciate and recognize UPRT, and it's just part of our program. Our audit program looks at it. We have a flight leader program where a designated coach meets with the operator every 90 days for 8 hours. And we look at human performance. We look at organizational performance and factors that affect human performance and team performance. And part of that mix during a period of time, we get into the risks, the specific risks related to runway excursions, collision on the ground, collision in the air, and loss control in flight. So we at Wyvern, we really believe in the value of UPRT. We understand and are very serious about the risk related to loss control in flight. And we're so happy to partner with organizations out in the industry who want to embrace professional standards like the EPIC S2, which if you're an organization that offers upset prevention and recovery training, you should do it in accordance to a standard so that you can demonstrate to the industry that you're meeting their expectations as stakeholders in that dimension of safety. So, in essence, whether it be an audit program or consulting services we provide, or even coaching services, and even in our training program, when we do root cause analysis, we often use the loss control in flight scenario, as I just did the last 2 weeks with some of our operators, to show that, if a pilot is conducting a maneuver like a circling approach and it doesn't go well, and that maneuver is entered into the SMS, so to speak, because it was an overshoot and maybe they had approached a stall indication, they were lucky that day. They could have had a loss of control in flight. And then we show how to break that down and do a root cause analysis. So we're happy to help with this. We being Wyvern, we're always happy to help with the mission of APS to increase awareness and improve and enhance training and education related to UPRT. So I think that's really what I wanted to share with you, BJ. So I'd like to turn it back over to you.
You know, Sonny and I had a great time today on session 2 where we had Captains Jeff Wofford and Dave Ryan with us, and hopefully they're all going to be able to join us for this session. So I'm excited about that. Let me go ahead and introduce our next speaker, which is AmandaFerraro. She is the CEO at Aviation Safety Solutions, and Aviation Safety Solutions, or AvSafety, specializes in a number of things: safety support, specialized auditing and SMS integration, Fortune 500 flight operations consulting to Part 91, 121, and 135 operators. And for Amanda, in her professional role, she's considered a world leader as BAO auditor, providing standardization and training programs for all auditors in his BAO. They support over 140 corporate flight departments and airline operators with implementation, consulting, and safety auditing. And before AvSafety, she was at Cessna Aircraft Company, John Deere Global Aviation Services, American Family Insurance, and FedEx, where she was an avionics instructor, delivery pilot, senior international captain, and training officer. She's the recipient of the Tony Kern Professionalism Award in 2016. She's also on the MBAA Safety Committee, where I work with Amanda, where she is the working group lead for the group that's specializing in SMS, Safety Management System, which is a very current and relevant topic that we need the best in the business, a true leader, and so Amanda fits the bill. She's also dedicated to making SMS accessible to all flight departments, both large and small. Amanda's a great lady, super smart, very engaging, and just a lot of fun to talk to. So Amanda, over to you for your thoughts.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm excited to be here today to talk to everybody about loss of control in flight and how that really integrates into our SMS. I've been an auditor for over 10 years, and I've had the opportunity to see well over 300 departments, organizations, and safety management systems, frankly. Let's talk about loss of control in flight and how important it is in identifying that risk in our own organization and looking at it through the lens of safety management system. Loss of control in flight, as we know, is the #1 fatal event in our industry. If your organization experiences this, more than likely, it's going to be fatal. I will tell you from an auditing perspective and all the years of experience that looking at organizations' SMS, we're not really doing it right. We're not really looking at the right hazards and mitigating the right risk. I get to see lots of different examples of all the wonderful change management plans and hazard reports that come into the system when we've had events. But we haven't done a good job of incorporating industry data into our safety management system. If we know that loss of control in flight is the #1 fatal event in our industry, why have we not included that into our safety management system and mitigated that appropriately? I'd like to share a story with you about a client of mine that I had several years ago. This client had FOQA data. They have an advanced SMS program. The client had multiple stick shaker events in their aircraft. And they actually never had even included that into their safety management system or even considered about really mitigating the issue. The pilots would get together at their committee meetings and they'd sit down and they would look at their data singly and individually. And it really wasn't until I had a chance to take a look at all of their data together that I realized that we had a pending issue, and it was serious. And it was one of those moments where I got to sit at the table with the pilots, and I kind of had a heart-to-heart with them. And I said, hey guys, I hate to tell you this, but you're on the verge of a fatal accident here, and it's loss of control. When you've had multiple stick shaker activation events, and your FOQA data over the last 5 months is telling you you've had 4. We've got a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to run this through your SMS. We're going to risk assess every part of this. And we're not just going to risk assess the very surface level things. We're actually going to risk assess this from a top to top-bottom type approach. And so one of the things that we did and that we put in place for them is training was essential. Having the organization start working on a plan to start sending the pilots through upset recovery training was critical to the success of this organization. Now, don't get me wrong. We looked at crew pairing, we looked at maintenance, we looked at scheduling, we looked at every facet of the organization to make sure that we had mitigated the risk down to its most lowest potential with multiple mitigations. But the number one thing that we discovered as part of this organization that was lacking was training and the pilots being able to really have and put themselves in a situation where, in the majority of instances, we fly a profile that's takeoff to touchdown. And there's a whole other world out there beyond takeoff to touchdown that we don't get an opportunity to fly in. So with that, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here talking with you today, and I look forward to your questions. Back to you.
Hello, it's time to introduce our next speaker for session 4 on safety management system auditors and experts, Jim Hosey. Jim is the president of Aviation Safety Compliance, specializing in aviation safety consulting, corporate aviation safety auditing, and incident and accident investigations. Jim has over 35 years of experience in military and civil aviation operations, safety management, and safety consulting and auditing. So you can see why he's perfect for this session. Jim has 15 years in management of a Part 91 flight operation where he served as safety manager, senior international captain, coordinated the safety management system processes, conducted internal and external audits, and coordinated their emergency response plan and emergency operations center. So he knows what it is that he's auditing folks on. All that experience serves Jim well as a certified aviation auditor for safety management systems and compliance programs, where Jim has conducted operational audits, investigations, inspections, and training in safety best practices for business and corporate operators. Jim is a graduate of several safety management programs, concentrating on ICAO and FAA standards and guidance. As a pilot, Jim is an airline transport rated pilot with multiple business jet ratings, as well as one for the Lockheed 382, otherwise known as the good old C-130 Hercules. Jim's aviation experience covers a really broad swath of aircraft systems. He's certified in airfield inspections and airfield management, an accident investigator in both fixed and rotary wing, and experience in all kinds of parts 91, 133, 135, 137, 139, 121, Part 5 SMS, Part 145, 161, and Part 65. And if that's not enough, he's experienced in Part 107, unmanned aircraft systems operations for inspection of utility lines. Jim's public appearances and speaking engagements include speaking for the Air Charter Safety Foundation, a workshop presenter at Bombardier Safety Stand Down, a guest speaker at many general aviation safety stand downs across the U.S. Jim has numerous education accreditations and professional affiliations and has served on the NBAA Safety Committee for over 12 years. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce you to Jim Hosey.
Thank you for the great introduction. When I'm working as a consultant, a safety consultant, or doing a safety audit for my clients, I'm looking for certain things that they have documented. One is found in a safety risk profile. Now, some operators use different nomenclature for a product like this. It's mentioned in ICAO Annex 19, Document 9859, also the ACs for the FAA, 12092 Bravo. There is a Delta I found recently, but I'm looking for their steps to identify things that are risk to them. This document, the safety risk profile, is one that I look at or try to find and work with my clients concerning that. What this document is, and let's say that we're going to start a flight department, people on a panel, and before we flip the switch on, to go fly that first flight or mission, we're going to sit down and say, okay, what are we facing? What are we facing at home, out there on the road? Whether it's our hangar training, the airplane doesn't fit, ground operations, mountainous terrain. We don't do any, very much internationally, or Part 91. But if we're Part 135 with large cabin, we're going to do a lot of that. But if we don't do a lot of international flying, we'll say, okay, we're going to identify that as a potential risk. And what's the mitigation? Well, the mitigation is to get training, go through international operations procedure training every 24 months, as stated in the regulations and standards. Or you may even do it more often because you haven't been doing it much, maybe 1 or 2 trips a year. And so you do it maybe every 8 months, 12 months, something like that. I'm looking for loss of control in flight identification as a potential risk. And if it's not stated or in that document or somewhere else in their documents, I'll start a conversation about that. Look, this is one of the biggest risks that any flight department, doesn't matter what part they fall under, could face. The data shows that of the loss of control situations or incidents or accidents that happen where there's fatalities, 44% of that is due to loss of control in flight. And that's a big number. And that's the way I start talking about it. And then we talk about the safety risk profile. Why haven't you listed loss of control in flight in there? And when they say, geez, that's a good idea, maybe we should do that. And what's the next step? On that document, I usually suggest a low, medium, and high rating. Low meaning, okay, we've identified it, but we're not necessarily going to mitigate that particular item. If it's medium and high, we're going to mitigate it. So loss of control in flight is medium or high. And what's the mitigation? The mitigation would be training, UPRT training. And it doesn't matter where they go for that. But I always talk about that type of training. I also talk about ICAO document 111, where it states all of the items associated with and guidance for loss of control in flight. The 3 components that they should be considering, or you should be considering, are ground training on avionics, aerodynamics, that sort of thing. Simulator, if you have the ability to do that, and actual flight in the airplane. I don't think anything is better, in my experience, than getting in the airplane and going through UPRT training. Perfect example, in my flight department, we had an incident that happened like that on a trip after picking up a new airplane. We're flying along. The lead airplane who picked up the airplane tried to top a thunderstorm, didn't quite do it, and they got into this type of situation. And we talked about it at home and decided, okay, we're gonna train for this loss of control in flight. So that wraps up my prepared presentation and my thoughts, and I look forward to the questions.
And now it's my great honor and privilege to introduce our next speaker, Captain John Cox of Safety Operating Systems, where he is the CEO and president. John has an MBA in aviation management from Daniel Webb College. He's a graduate of the U.S. Navy Postgraduate School Aviation Safety Command Program. He's an IOSA and ISBAO auditor. From a flying standpoint, John is a highly experienced airline, corporate, and general aviation pilot with over 14,000 hours, 10,000 of which are in command of air carriers. He's held positions as an instructor, check pilot, and test pilot. He is type rated in Airbus, Boeing, Fokker, and Citation models. John also has an extensive safety background where he is the former executive air safety chairman for the Airline Pilots Association. He's the recipient of the Sir James Martin Award, ALPA's Air Safety Award, and U.S. Airways Air Safety Achievement Award. He's also been an accident investigator working on the NTSB on numerous airline accidents. He is a go-to expert for the news media, such as ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, C-SPAN, Aviation Week, Time Magazine, and many more. He appears as an expert on the television program series Air Disasters and Why Planes Crash. He's a fellow at the Royal Aeronautical Society, where his most recent paper, most appropriate here, is Upset Recovery Training, History, Core Concepts, and Mitigation. You may see him appearing as well in the USA Today column, Ask the Captain. I have known him personally for the last 18 years. He is just a great guy, fantastic leader. I consider him a mentor and a dear friend. Welcome, John.
As we come to the end of this summit, Safety Summit, one of the things that's apparent is that aviation overall is improving in safety. We're doing a lot of things right. One of the areas that we're seeing that we have not gotten the results that we had hoped for or even trained for is loss of control in flight. And as an auditor, looking at a lot of different operators that operate all over the world in a variety of conditions, when you ask an operator, so how are you mitigating loss of control in flight? You get a variety of answers. But what we see over time is that the training that we have done in the past has resulted in a minimal reduction in loss of control in flight accidents. And so as we evolve using a safety management system and we look at safety assurance and risk mitigation, and we have to come to the conclusion that the processes we've used in the past have not been what we need to do in the future. We need to rethink how we're doing loss of control in flight training. We need to improve the recognition of a potential upset condition so that a crew can intervene earlier. We need to interface better with the automation in the aircraft, particularly the newer generation airplanes. But we also need to ensure that the crews have the manual flying skills to be able to deal with a significant upset and appropriately respond to drive the airplane toward the heart of the envelope and thereby reducing or eliminating the likelihood of a loss of control in-flight accident or fatality. So we've got some challenges as safety professionals going forward. And utilizing a safety management system approach, which is being more and more widely adopted. And when we look at the 4 pillars of SMS and we say, okay, what are our largest risks? The most likely accident, runway excursion. The good news with that, the likelihood of fatalities is pretty low. But when you look at fatalities, the number of these accidents from loss of control in flight remains relatively steady. And while low, the rate of fatalities out of a loss of control accident is very high. And sadly, and a great concern, is it has not gotten better over time. So as we project risk and we look forward to be proactive in risk assessment, and then risk mitigation, we've got to come to the conclusion that we've got to do something different than what we've done in the past. We have to improve. Things got better in the mid-90s. We started doing upset recovery simulator training, and things improved, but that's no longer enough. For years, we did not teach stall recovery well. We finally, as an industry, learned that. after we've seen some tragic accidents and very mishandled stall events. But utilizing an SMS format and taking that and projecting and saying, what do we need to change? That's where the safety professionals are getting together, and we look at on-airplane training, which EASA has embraced, and I think that they're right. So we go forward with how we're going to mitigate risk, how we're going to improve aviation safety in the next decade, in the next 20 years. If we don't deal with loss of control in flight effectively, then we're going to end up with a stagnant accident rate. And that's something none of us want. So I thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. And I hope that we can work forward as an industry to improve aviation safety at the same rate or better than we have in the last decade. Thank you.
Great, guys. Well, we have a full room today. Randy, if you could go ahead and start adding everybody in here. I think we have a total of 10 seats available, and we got 10 I can see in the waiting room. So it's standing room only, so to speak. So great to have everybody here. So to make a claim on the reality of an online event is we have John Cox is on a flight to Asia right now. Jim Hosey had his Wi-Fi go down at his house, so he's not able to join. And Dave, great to see you back. And Rich, I got your note about needing to leave early. So all good, guys. Well, just fantastic to have everybody here. So I'm hoping we can have a wonderful discussion on safety management system implementation, risk management, and then, of course, getting to potentially some solutions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to throw out one question to the auditors who just did a great job providing those prepared comments. What about a flight department that watches an event like this and realizes, my goodness, I missed loss of control in flight? It's not something that we've identified. We need to integrate it into our system. How do they go about that process? And why don't we start with you, Sonny, then over to Amanda, then we can open up for general discussion before going to the next one. Sonny, how does a flight department get going on something like that?
Yeah, thanks, BJ. There's a number of ways to go about doing that, but one way I'd recommend is the Flight Safety Foundation has several standards called the Basic Aviation Risk Standard. And if you look at this standard, let's say for contracted operations, it would apply to any Part 91 flight department. And these standards get to the heart of managing risk, where an SMS is a structure. It's a set of tools, if you will, to help you manage risk. SMS in itself doesn't manage risk. It takes, obviously, the human endeavor, but then the human says, well, what do I put in this? How do I put it in the SMS? And so the Flight Safety Foundation offers the basic aviation risks. There's 11 basic risks that kill people. And right on the top of the list there is loss of control in flight. And then what they offer is an identification of these 11 basic risks and then mitigation strategies to prevent them. And you go through these different mitigation strategies and you ask yourself, if you're in a flight department, wow, how do I go about this? Well, identify loss control in your SMS and then enter these mitigation strategies into your SMS to see how well you're doing with each of these. Are you implementing these strategies? That's a beginning. You can always reach out for help. You know, a number of people, anybody probably on this event would be willing to help anybody starting off with these questions. And that's what I love to say about Wyvern. You don't have to be a client of Wyvern to call Wyvern and say, let's have a conversation. How do I get started? We'd love that conversation. It doesn't cost you anything. And so people helping people is another great way to start. You know, you don't have to sit there and feel like you're alone with manuals. We're all passionate about helping each other. So grab your manuals, whether it be Flight Safety Foundation, ICAO, the EPIC S2 standard, anything you can grab, like, you know, the FAA advisory circulars. But then when you have those at your fingertips, then call me, call Randy, call Otter, call Amanda, anybody, you know, and say, hey, how do I get started here? And we'll be happy to help.
Excellent. Thank you, Sonny. Amanda, what are your thoughts on that? I'm sure you run into this with your clients that have missed a risk. In this particular case, we're citing loss of control. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And Sunny, thanks for the great resource. You know, I look at SMS from a FAA perspective, and I think one of the things that our industry has really missed the mark on is the opportunity to capture hazards within our own organization and run them through our safety management system effectively. So if I was a flight department managing or trying to look at this risk, what I would do is I would use the tools that we've already established in our organization, and that is submit a safety report and start the process of the safety committee working through mitigations. Now, one of the neat things about FAA Part 5 is there's something called system interface. The FAA expects you to interface your SMS with all the various aspects of your operation and get a really good root cause understanding within each functional area, how that hazard interacts with other parts. If you consider SMS as a system, which the FAA does, what I would do is take that risk and look at it from all the different various pillars of stakeholders, facilities, scheduling and dispatch. How does that affect our manuals? And then how does that affect third-party vendors to get down to like very, very deep level root cause to provide mitigations on each single level. So training is affected as part of that. The manual suites are affected as part of that. And it really gives you a multi-tiered mitigation strategy more than just the surface level that we see. Unfortunately, I see too many times where the chief pilot has counseled a pilot because they've had an event, or the safety committee puts out a bulletin. You know, what really needs to happen is manuals need to change. Scheduling dispatch needs to take a look at how they're scheduling crews together. Training needs to be addressed. Third-party vendors need to be looked at for risks as it associates with loss of in-flight control. So FOQA data needs to be reviewed as part of that. So it needs to be an entire encompassing process, and that needs to go through the SMS.
I feel like I prepared you with that question, Amanda. You just knocked it out of the park. That was great. Thank you for doing that. I didn't. She knows that. I think that the risk management process, if you go to session 1, I think Delta Airlines does a great job of demonstrating how they manage risk, and they approach it very much like Amanda just talked about it, comprehensively and taking action, which I think is the critical part of it, which is essential. So I know that I want to go to Shane and Rich, because you guys just finished a session a little bit ago. And Rich, I know you're leaving in a minute, but Shane, tell us what time it is where you're at right now.
BJ, it's just coming up to 20 to 6 in the morning. So I've been here enjoying the session 1, 2, and involved in 3 since 2 o'clock in the morning here in Brisbane.
Well, thank you. Well, you know what? If Randy sees your head fall over there, he'll remove you from the event if you fall asleep. So we're good to go.
No problem.
Hey, Rich. So a question for you when it comes to safety risk management, safety management systems, and general aviation. Some of those concepts are not well understood or aren't part of the lexicon. What are your thoughts on that? Is there a role of general aviation to, first off, help improve its safety from those type of philosophies, and also would it help them prepare themselves for more higher levels of operations, such as that corporate executive 135, 121? What are your thoughts on that, Rich, when it comes to a terminology challenge and actions to be taken?
Sure, and I guess I'll claim some ignorance on SMS because of exactly what you stated. At the couple of flight schools that I've been a part of, they've eventually evolved to having policies and procedures, but whether they were called SMS, that lexicon hasn't really permeated, at least in the smaller operations. And I consider what I do is kind of downstream of that, right? So if SMS comes up and says, okay, we have identified a risk, how are we going to mitigate it? It's going to be training. And if it's the training going to be in an airplane, okay, so then that's probably where I might come in, right? Or particularly at different flight schools that I've been affiliated with, we try to make sure that we have regular instructor meetings to discuss, right? Maybe, again, not under an SMS umbrella, but to discuss what's happening and what's going on and what kind of recurrent training can we give to the new instructors to get everybody on the same level in terms of thinking about how we do what we do, how do we do it safely, and then getting them trained in expanding their envelopes as well, so that they have exposure to UPRT, so that they can identify hazards themselves and perhaps incorporate those concepts with their students.
And I think it's important to note that, Rich is one of those experts that is always looking forward in safety. He's one that's not about training what is the regulatory requirements, to training what is required to make pilots safe. And that's very often a different thing. And the good news is there's some harmony with that philosophy in SMS, is that here's a risk, how do we effectively mitigate that within or beyond what regulatory requirements are? So thank you for sharing that perspective, Rich. Anything to add to that?
No, I think you're spot on with that. Sure.
Cool. Great. So transition phase here to Dave, and then over to Jeff, and up to Otter and Randy for some questions. So Dave, you have the unique experience of being a senior leader at a corporate flight department as well, coming from Bombardier, part of the Bombardier Safety Stand Down. But there you sit, a professor at Embry-Riddle, executive director of the Robinson Safety Institute. What is your perspective looking both at the beginning of the aviation career of pilots starting the training and where they may land either in corporate or airline operations? Is there any words of wisdom you can share about that process and what matters most to students going through that?
Yeah, of course, our students here are starting kind of grassroots, right? They're getting probably the most standardized training you can get in the civilian world anyway. So, but if I'm a flight department director and I'm starting a brand new department, obviously there's a lot of unknowns, and we're identifying different risks that we're going to be facing as we spool up our safety management system. And we use all the tools, as Sonny and Amanda stated very clearly, getting the safety report processed, identifying what we need to do, that kind of thing. I think that the important part is once we get out of that, we identify upset recovery as something we want to address. How do we do it? Right? How do we do it? We've stated before that there's tons of people out there that are 100% willing to help advise through that process. I would also plug the MBAA Safety Committee, and anybody on it could certainly talk to the subject. So, and then making sure that, okay, we're going to do this. Now, what do we do? There's plenty of vendors out there that do it. Make sure you vet them well. Make sure you vet their instructors well. It's a long process, not a complicated process, but a long process, and it's not unsurmountable, right? And you get to that final step of okay, we've selected our vendor, we've selected our instructors, and now we are proud to not train to the minimums, right? We're going to be training to above minimums. And I really like that statement that Rich said. We gotta train above, we gotta shoot above the minimums. If we fall short and we just train to minimums, kind of screwed, right? But if we train to above minimums and we fall short a little bit, we're okay, right? We're still in the green, right? So that was a long, convoluted answer to your question, but it's not an unsurmountable process to add this kind of training to your repertoire of airmanship tools.
Excellent. Thank you. That was a great answer, Dave. I'm going to go to Jeff quick and then over to Shane. And so with Jeff, I'm going to ask him a little bit about, the challenges of corporate flight department facing requirements such as SMS. Then Shane, just kind of get you thinking, is maybe an outline of where corporate executive 135 is in Australia and where you see that going in the future. Because I know there's a lot of exciting things happening down there with regulation, UPRT. When we were together in Singapore a few weeks ago, we had a nice conversation about that. So Jeff, you're sitting between, on my screen anyway, two safety auditors with a lot of experience around you. What is the best advice you give to a leader in a flight department, whether that's a safety manager, chief pilot, director of operations, of how to approach the entire process of risk management? And if you can work loss of control in that discussion, that's great. But if not, I think the most important part, there's a lot of there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? There's a lot of expectations of a flight department, especially now with Part 5 SMS coming up. So over to you, Jeff, for your words of wisdom.
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this brief, which, as you know, is very difficult for me. So I think the biggest statement I could make is that was a couple of them actually. One of them is the status quo doesn't work. You know, if you've been just because you've been a chief pilot for a long time, you've got an established flight department. You don't need this newfangled SMS. That's the wrong attitude. I think that, and you know, and you're aware of this. I mean, one of my passions here lately is trying to explain, you know, SMS in terms of something that you can make it simple. It doesn't have to be this really complicated issue. It's a practical way to build a safety program and to operate within it. And I think our biggest problem is there's so many people that just do not understand SMS. And so I think my first recommendation for these people would be, hey, do some research. Don't automatically assume that this is some kind of conspiracy to make your job harder. What this does, it makes you better. And so, you know, we had Amanda started out, and Amanda is phenomenal the way she approaches SMS, and she believes it. And then, you know, Rich was talking about how really, you know, SMS isn't even in the vernacular of you know, basic flight training. And then you've got Dave talking about how it's been integrated into formal programs like what Embry-Riddle has and what UND has. And so that's our issues. We've got this tremendous gap. What we need to be doing is making sure that people understand that SMS is a tool to make us better and that it needs to be integrated. I mean, when somebody comes in for their first private pilot lesson, it needs to be approached from an SMS standpoint. And we need to talk about risk mitigation before they go out there and get in that airplane for the very first time. And that way, by the time they get into the corporate arena, then it's something that's well accepted. And so that's our challenge right now, is not only getting new people to look at SMS as an effective tool to improve safety, but also to go back and get the attention of some of these, I'm trying to think of the most polite word, I guess, dinosaur, that don't think we need to change anything because this is the way we've always done it and we've never had a problem. Well, guess what? You know, you're going to one of these days. We can go down a long list of what ifs. What if this person had done this, or what if this person had done that? You don't want to wait till you've had an accident and say, "Oh, I wish I'd incorporated SMS 10 years ago." So, like I said, I can get a little passionate about this, but that's how I feel. I think we've got to get everybody's attention and understand this is not something to make you look worse or make you work harder. It's a way to make you work more effectively and to improve your operation.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. That's really, really insightful. That's really helpful to those people out there that are feeling exactly the way you described. This is not here to help me. It's here to hurt me. That's not the case. So Shane, when you and I chatted in Singapore, we talked about the condition of the corporate executive market in Australia. And I think there's certainly opportunity there for improved safety. Do you want to maybe talk about that a little bit, then maybe kind of the state of change going on down there in relation to loss of control?
Sure, BJ, thank you. Look, I'll start with the second part of that question first. So where we are right now in Australia in regards to regulatory compliance around loss of control is that we've been basically issued that all Part 121 operators here in Australia must have a UPRT program in place by now. So the larger end of the market, the 30 seats or more, the 121 world is now doing UPRT. We do have some problems in regards to some of the access to simulators that do have the Part 60 change 2 extended envelope capabilities down here. There are some that don't have that. And there are workarounds for that, for those older simulators. Moving on to the 135 world, into the corporate area, one of the biggest things is exactly what people have been saying already on the forum so far is ensuring that they have an SMS that's in place, not just for regulatory compliance, but is there for genuine outcomes. And that, to me, is really what's going to form the basis of moving the corporate world further into this risk mitigation. And I think it comes back again to to the way in which we really treat even the most basic of threat and error management. You talk about threat and error management in a briefing, but you talk about the threats, but how are you going to mitigate those threats? There's no point identifying threats if you're not going to put in mitigation strategies. So by implementing even the most basic of SMS programs into the 135 world, it will start the process of identifying the threats. And as we all know here, when you look at a loss of control in flight, it is an unacceptable risk within the risk assessment matrix. And UPRT is the key way to reduce that, both by reducing the risk through the prevention and reducing the severity of outcomes should it occur through the recovery process. So UPRT is going to form a really key part for all of the 135 operators as they get into a more robust SMS program. And if they're not doing that, then they really need to be looking at the reasons why, because as everybody has said here, SMS is here to help. It's not the bogeyman.
Exactly. Well said, Shane. So anybody missed session 3 with Rich and Shane, go have a look at that. It's really, really insightful. Really breaks it down into really the essential elements of UPRT and risk management, and also the addressing of the human factors. Rich, I'm not sure when we're going to lose you here. Do you want to have any final comments on the discussion so far? And then we're going to move on to a question to SMS managers. Rich?
I think we can move on to the questions. I have everything else to add. This is quite a panel, and I'm here to learn.
We all are. Never-ending process, right? So here's a point that came in, looks like from LinkedIn. It's not really a question. It seems to be a statement of fact. I just want to throw it out to Sunny and Amanda to discuss. It says the issue of misunderstanding SMS lies with the SMS managers. They lack marketing it within. They don't do enough to increase the buy-in. Sunny, over to you for thoughts, and Amanda.
Yeah, absolutely right. This is an ongoing challenge. When you look at any required change in an organization, there's models you can use like ADCAR or whatever like that, where you have, increase awareness of the need for the change, and then the desire, and then the knowledge, and so forth for an ADCAR model. So what we're talking about is an organization that may, I guess, not have an SMS, but a safety manager trying to convince the organization either to get one or to take the one they're using and make it effective. And so if we would just back up a little bit to help with the marketing, just using different words. I think, Rich, you said it, with regard to what your role was in your flight operations, where you were downstream or something like that. It's important that if we use words like risk management instead of SMS, hardly anybody pushes back on risk management. They say, of course, risk management, right? And so if we would just use those terms instead of SMS, because people get really scared about the word system, right? They think of engineers, they think of people with pocket protectors and a NASA. And it's like, no, this is really risk management. It really comes together in a nice package that makes sense. The other thing to keep in mind for the marketing of and the promotion of safety risk management, and that's what I like to call it instead of SMS, safety risk management, is that it really is quality with a safety focus. Now, if you talk about quality, any organization, if they are professional, they want excellence every time. That's what quality is. And a safety risk management program, also known as SMS, guarantees or ensures a professional safety risk management every time. So it's quality with a safety focus. So if anybody's ever gone through the ISO 9000, which quality organizations need to do, you identify your threats out there and you address those threats. And that's what SMS does. But I really think it's important, to Rich's point, the lexicon, I think that's what you said. The nomenclature that we use really needs to be very well decided. And I love to use the words quality, risk management, or even operational risk management.
The words really matter. Absolutely.
They do.
Make a big difference. Amanda, over to you.
So I'm going to take a different approach to this, and coming from FAA Part 5 and what is expected, because that is something that we're all going to be at the intersection of very quickly. But the FAA actually expects the SMS manager to be the facilitator of the SMS, not necessarily be the SMS. And I think that's where fundamentally we have things wrong in our industry. It's one of the parts or pieces that we've not really done all that great with. In majority of flight departments and flight operators, what we see that the safety manager is the one that gets the report in, runs the risk assessment, and then actually tries to put mitigations in place, and then it's approved by the safety committee. But actually, what should be happening per the FAA is you should have a safety manager that actually facilitates the SMS and is a mentor, a guide for the managers. And the onus is actually on the managers in the operation to run the risk assessments and come up with mitigations or risk controls that make sense to the operation, and then assign a process owner within that functional team to monitor that mitigation or risk control over time. And so I think when you start to look at the buy-in from the manager level and from managers starting to participate and promote SMS within their own functional area, it starts to make sense structurally that you would want to have that onus be put on the managers within each functional group. So within flight operations, within maintenance, if you have line service personnel, or if you have flight attendants, you would select like the lead flight attendant, the director of maintenance, the chief pilot, etc., to be those individuals that are the SMEs or the safety matter experts that run those risk assessments and then provide some very clear guidance on mitigations and what actually will really reduce that risk over time. And it really makes sense, honestly. Our safety managers do not have some of the expertise required to really understand the level of risk for the operation, nor do they really understand in some cases that what mitigations are really going to bring that risk down over time. So I think it's a fundamental change that we need to start considering. And there are parts of FAA Part 5, honestly, that I'm very, very much a fan of, and this is one of them. So thanks for bringing that up on the LinkedIn post. It was great.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, guys. That was a great response. In fact, you're getting clapping from the person who asked that on LinkedIn. So good job. So I'm going to pull one of our team in here because this is a question about fly-by-wire versus non-flight envelope protected airplanes. And so, Otter, I might point this one at you. What is your point of view in terms of UPRT training needs for operators using non-envelope protected aircraft to the ones operating envelope protected? So Otter, who's Captain Clark McNeese, by the way, keep calling me Otter, just got back from Fiji Airways, where they operate 737 NGs and also A330s and A350s. And so there's a big part of fly-by-wire UPRT training that really requires them to go into their degraded modes to truly be effective in an airplane upset. So over to you, Otter. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of certainly flight envelope protected airplanes, and I think we're certainly trending that way in the industry, especially in heavy equipment there, and probably one day, and even more so in GA, we're starting to get some of it. I know, like even the Cessna 182 I fly has got an enhanced safety program in it to prevent overbanks and things like that. So this technology advancement, I think, is going to contribute to the safety, but ultimately we still have the same problem. And that is what happens when these systems fail, what happens when that Swiss cheese model gets threaded, and now the pilots are thrust into this time-critical, life-threatening situation. They've got to save the day there. And we can't just teach pilots to recover. We've got to teach better prevention. One of the ways that we do that is to help pilots better understand their degraded modes of their aircraft. Unfortunately, from what I've seen working with the airlines, I don't think the vast majority of, for instance, Airbus pilots fully understand their degraded modes and what protections they lose there. An Airbus degrades just from normal law to alternate law, which is just the first one. You got several levels of alternate law, and you've already lost stall protection. So they still need it. They still need UPRT. And 90% of UPRT anyway is non-type specific. Mm-hmm. And so if pilots could get that comprehensive UPRT, it's going to better prepare them for fly-by-wire airplanes anyway.
Well, it's much like when you get a modern car. It has autopilot in it. You're driving down the road, and your attention span is probably the worst it's ever been when you think it's taking over certain protections right. Well, that's, coming from the Airbus myself after a number of years, it really is a situation where you can get over trusting the airplane. And what you learn very quickly is more complex the airplane, the more complexly it fails. And so it's something to be considering, when you're in that environment, that probably increasing manual handling proficiency, manual handling skills, understanding how to handle the airplane in degraded modes is probably even more important for fly-by-wire pilots, not less. And so it's pretty interesting to see that, because as we know, can a fly-by-wire flight envelope protected airplane get upset? Yes, it can. Can it stall? Yes, it can. So loss of control is pretty impervious to solutions of technology. It happens despite the best of intentions. So it's certainly a challenging situation for us all to face. So with that, Randy, come over to you to a question you might have had so far. I know I've left you alone up in the corner there to kind of take the baton from me on a few.
Well, I've been listening, and I think there's one aspect that has permeated several of the comments that I've heard from Sunny, from Amanda. Rich made the point, and that's about ownership. And it's something that, Sunny and Amanda were trying to invite flight department managers, safety managers to try and help protect themselves. Rich was inviting pilots to take part in their training and have a voice. And I think that there's a common thread there where we're seeing that the regulatory solution has left us with the mess that we face, where loss of control in flight is the leading cause of fatalities. And the solution to that is not to sit back and wait for other people to fix it. It is to try and figure out how we can fix it ourselves. Now, one of the good and bad things about sessions like this is that probably some of the people that should be watching it, that need some safety awareness, are not the ones that sign up. So I'm going to appeal to the facts that a lot of the people that have registered for this event are those that are interested in how they can be more safe, and encourage them to take ownership of their safety, because there are things that they can do to help reduce their risks.
Well, Randy, it's interesting. One of the reasons why we went to the LinkedIn Live platform is the fact that it's on demand in perpetuity. People can come back and watch these sessions moving forward. So it's great in that respect. Okay, everybody, we're past the top of the hour here. Let me just go around the room to see if there's any final thoughts, words of wisdom, topics to bring up from our speakers. So, Sunny, why don't we start with you? Then we'll go just around the room here on my screen. So after Sunny, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, BJ. Well, I think the some of the thoughts I have as a wrap up, if you will, is Amanda's mentioned several times there about the impending FAA mandate for SMS, and certainly that is on the horizon. And companies like hers and Wyvern and others are out there to help people, get into alignment with the FAA mandate. That's what we do for a living. We're experts at it. But the reality is most people are not at the threat, if you want to call that a threat. I don't call it a threat, but they're not under that mandate. So Part 91 operators, that mandate's not on the horizon for them. But we still have reasonable tools and reasonable guidance for them to implement and make their SMS effective if they already have one. So, it's on the one hand, we try to make SMS or safety risk management sound easy because people should do it. It's the professional thing to do. But as you dig into it, it becomes basically a complex professional endeavor. And so just like people need to come to an operation like APS to get their UPRT training, it's really important that people don't miss out on all they can be as safety risk managers and consider the utilization of safety providers like you might have visiting with you today at Wyvern and others to help guide you into pathways that you may not see. Everybody and every organization has blind spots. Even if you're professionally focused to be excellent every day, you have blind spots. So that third party can help you uncover those areas. So that's pretty much it. Have an SMS. Make sure that the 11 basic aviation risks that the Flight Safety Foundation point out that kill people every day, to include loss of control in flight, is in your SMS, and you're mitigating those threats appropriately.
Thank you, Sunny. Jeff?
Well, I guess one of the things I want to point out, so one of the great pleasures of my life was getting to know Gene Sternin. And in a conversation I had with him one day, he made the comment that they taught monkeys to operate some of the space capsules, but it took a human to put man on the moon. And so I think what I'm trying to get at, or what he was trying to get at, is the fact that we have to, it takes our human capacity to do some amazing things. And that's what we've got to realize with SMS and with improving safety in our industry is we can either strive for mediocrity or we can try to strive for excellence. And I think embracing SMS, and in particular looking at ways we can better ourselves, like including UPRT in our risk mitigation strategies, is going to make a difference. That's what's going to put us on the moon. That's what's going to make us better as an industry. And we got to get people to wake up, and instead of just accepting doing things the same way they've done it, in the past and not had a problem, is to step up and be the best they can possibly be. And that means incorporating these systems to make you better. And SMS is not a dirty word.
Thank you, Jeff. And Shannon, I got your note. You have to leave at 15. So let's go to you with your final thoughts for today's session, then to Amanda, and then Dave will wrap up the event today.
No problem. No, thanks, BJ. Look, I think what we're looking at really as a whole is that this element of threat within a flight operation, particularly loss of control, needs to be looked at quite seriously right from the grassroots. So Rich and I spoke about it with Randy in session 3 about instilling the professionalism early into a pilot. And just being a professional pilot doesn't necessarily mean you have to be paid. And taking that professional outcome and looking at and understanding that the human is the strongest link, but it's also the weakest link. The human is going to make mistakes, and that's where the loss of control comes in a lot of the time, is the human error. And it's not so much the initial aircraft upset, it's the subsequent response. So looking at that robust response, especially within the 135 and the GA world, where they don't have the underlying check and training systems that the larger carriers have the ability to fall back on. So that's where the safety managers and the managers of the operations have to step up and look at it and go, we need to do something. And where are the threats? The threats are in this particular part of the operation, as Amanda said, it's about looking at that individual's operation. Where are the specific risks within that particular operation? And then taking the appropriate steps to mitigate it. And we can see that SMS combined with the mitigation techniques, particularly around loss of control, are a really powerful tool. And we saw that in Brian Sims's presentation of the 50% reduction in precursor events in 5 years. And if an airline the size of Delta Airways can have such an effective result, then there's absolutely no reason why an effective SMS led by an effective safety leader with an effective training solution can't have the same result.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Shane. It's no longer anecdotal. There's 5 million flights of FOQA data that point to an effectively implemented program can truly mitigate the upset precursor events from even happening at all, which is just super, super important. So over to you, Amanda, then to Dave.
Thank you. I think some of my last final thoughts are that I think what our industry needs to recognize is that for the last 20 years, we've been walking around saying that SMS is going to be predictive in nature, and we're really not there as an industry. When I look at where we're headed and the next 20 years of our SMS journey together, what I see is the opportunity for organizations to capture and gather their data in a way that's going to allow them to be very proactive when it comes to predicting your next incident or accident. That's really where we need to be honest with you. And that's where the FAA is pushing our industry to go. It's not the reactive stuff anymore. It's being able to look at your FOQA data, look at your safety reports coming in, and look at your internal audit data to say, we're having a bunch of events, or we're seeing precursor events leading up to a potential pending incident or accident. We need to start pushing this through our SMS and running it and mitigating it on all levels. So I think when it comes to looking at loss of control, particularly with the statistical basis behind it, it is imperative that operators have that on their forward visibility and can have tools in their tool belt to be able to effectively mitigate that across the board. And when you look at training and adjustment of programs and processes in your operation, FOQA data, installing that on your aircraft, those are all wonderful mitigations to really start turning SMS into something effective. Let's, honestly, guys, I've seen so many hundreds of operators, and it drives me nuts because I get to see, things like we're tracking how many times we're logging into our safety software or how many safety reports we're receiving. Well, those are great for some things, but let's get down to what's really important, which is let's start tracking how many potential events are leading up to loss of control in flight. And then let's start doing something about it through SMS. Isn't that where the value meets the pocketbook here? And we've spent thousands of dollars on audits and auditors and programs and all that stuff. Why are we tracking silly stuff? So I love what's coming up for us in the next chapter of SMS, and it's super exciting. So thanks for having me today.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda. Great to have you here. Dave, over to you, sir.
Well, Randy had a chord with me that we've been challenged with for a long time, right? The 1,000+ participants on this summit are already members of the choir. And if they're not members of the training alumni yet, they're ready to be because they're interested and they're showing progress in learning about the UPRT and how it integrates with the SMS. Back to the early days of Safety Stand Down, through our many conversations at the MBAA Safety Committee, we called this reaching the unreachable. And what I would do is offer the challenge to all of those participating in this summit that you are now a crusader. Spread the word, right? You have responsibility not just for your own watch, but to make sure to pass the message. And there's a lot of important messages to spread, but this is certainly one of them. And we encourage you to spread that message and join the crusade.
Thank you, Dave. Great. With that, everybody, we're going to wrap up the event today. Let me thank my co-hosts today, Captain Clark McNeese and Randy Brooks across the top. We each took a session and we're here together for today in this one to end it up. Thank you guys for doing that. I know that there's a lot of finger poking and managing and reacting. So very, very well done. With our speakers today, Sunny, Jeff, Amanda, Shane, and Dave, thank you so much for being here. It's really all about you guys and the messages you have to share. So hopefully we're able to facilitate that to get the information out that you feel the industry needs. And most importantly, big thank you to everybody that's here at the event online. And to reiterate what Dave said, you are the champions. You need to get the word out. This resource, these events, and the other sessions are here to be referred to. Please do so. We're all here to help. We're all here to save lives, and we're all in it together. So with that, everybody, take care, and we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.